On. Hello, hello.
Yeah.
Yours is working?
It's like a professional studio here. Why should I be surprised?
Yeah.
I'm not. I've seen a few of them. It looks good.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, good. Now, let's just take it. As always, there's some technical difficulties. It's these headphones, but... We're going to go with that. See what... Ooh, I like the sound of my own voice.
Yeah.
That's why we do this,
That's
right?
right.
See what we look like here before we get going. My one pet peeve is to get this shot straight. And it looks pretty straight. Oh, look at it.
On
well
that
lit.
camera.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good camera on the,
Look at that.
on the iPad. Yeah. That's nice. I've
Good
been working.
stuff.
Oh, wow. Sharp.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Lights make all the difference in television.
Unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. For in the back, I mean, this is, I'm experimenting with where to put them, but
Yeah.
I've heard like backlighting is, well, this is the opposite of backlighting, right? Backlighting
Right.
would be facing us from the behind.
Yeah, I think so.
And this is just to light up the back because it was getting really, really dark. And
Yeah.
We'll do a quick intro here. Ladies and gentlemen, in my house today, Graham Richardson is here.
Great to be here, Mark.
Wow, thanks for coming. It's
Yeah.
like I'm watching television.
Yeah.
The face of news, the face of local media.
That's right.
And you said you were going to ride your bike here today, but you did not.
I did not.
It was disappointing.
It was a little wet. I ride my bike a lot. I gave up the parking pass about a year and a half ago, and I ride in the winter, and it's a short commute.
But strangely enough, he has his biking shorts on, which
No.
is really all I wanted.
Yeah, that's
out
right.
of
That's
this.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So you live close by then. You're up and
I
down.
do.
Because I see you post pictures of Ottawa River all the time in the morning.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
spectacular. Right?
Well, I live East Ottawa, and it's close to Gatineau.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if you like to be outdoors in winter and in summer, it's a great place to be, close to the river. And
Yeah. Have you ever been to the Riverwalk in San Antonio?
I have been there, but under different circumstances. I was actually covering a hurricane, but I know of it, and it's beautiful.
It's unbelievable. And
Yeah.
I always wonder why, and I know the season's not as long here, but like there's great opportunities, first of all, on the canal.
Yeah.
Or even just down here, you know,
Yeah.
and there's places in Barhaven, Riverside South too, where there could be a restaurant or something down there on the water.
Well, and the two terraces that they've done, that Andre Schad has done, the falls and the on the hill,
Yeah.
terrace on the hill, are Tavern on the Hill, the two taverns.
Yes.
Tavern by the Falls and Tavern. At least, I mean, that has shown that, you know, this town can
That's right.
really
never been to
embrace
those?
that. Yeah.
Oh.
They're really casual,
Yeah.
and they use minimal imprint, like minimal footprint for the restaurant. Backdrop of Parliament Hill, beautiful. Like, why isn't there an outdoor restaurant overlooking Parliament Hill?
Yeah.
There should have been one 150 years ago.
That's right.
And,
Maybe there was.
Maybe there was. And so, yeah, I mean, it's that kind of thing. Yeah, there's lots of natural spots here where you'd think
Yeah.
they could
for sure.
take full advantage of that.
And I guess traveling the world is what really sort of shows us what can be done in other places, right?
Yeah.
There's a place too where it's like a city yard. It's over by the ski hill that you can see on the canal, and there's a city yard right beside it with these cliffs. Have you seen that one I'm talking about there?
Yeah.
It's spectacular.
Yeah.
I thought if there was like restaurants in there with like, you know, maybe a light show or lighting up those cliffs, that would be a tourist attraction.
It would be.
It's
And
amazing.
I mean, the thing is, too, we benefit from all the natural stuff that's untouched. The green belt, like, you know, you land in the city of Ottawa in the airport, and you're driving in, and you often think, where are the people, right? It's amazing there's a million people here. So the other side of that sort of, you know, why haven't we developed all this stuff around it? The other side, of course, is it's kind of nice to be untouched. But, yeah, I mean, whether it's Le Breton or other parts of the city, you can see the potential there,
Yes.
and you wonder why, you know, how long it's going to take until someone does something major.
Did you ever get poison ivy?
I did as a kid, but not around
It's
here.
down here, like I almost stopped going down there last year because my dog got it.
Really?
Or no, my dog got poison ivy, got something, and you see the poison ivy everywhere down there. And the
Down
dog,
along the river.
yeah, chewed her fur right off of her, man. It
Wow.
was terrible. Yeah, so we only go down there when
On
there's
leash.
no puddles, on leash. Yeah, used to.
Yeah.
What was it last year when there was the flooding, right? So
Right.
she would be lying in every single puddle, and
Yeah, you
it was
gotta
a
watch
disaster
that.
for us.
Yeah.
So I was wondering because I think there's so much of it down there that I can feel it in the air. Like
Really?
when I ride my bike down there, we often drive down town from on that path, and I can feel like the itchiness in the air. It's a bizarre feeling. But,
Do you get it a lot, or have you
I just started getting it in the past 10 years. And terribly. Our family gets it terribly.
Really?
Oh yeah, emergency room.
I've got a friend like that. He's got a cottage, and he's got to watch that. Yep. And he's had it bad for a lot of times.
And oftentimes you don't even know where it is. It's just like I said, in the air. It's airborne, and
right.
It can be crazy. So you born and raised not in Ottawa.
So. Grew up West End, Toronto. I was actually born in the States. I was there for 6 months. My dad was down on business, so I've got dual citizenship. And I was grew up West End, Toronto, but then I went to Queens, and then I met my wife there, and she's from out west, so we were in Calgary for 4 years, Edmonton for 4 years.
Because of your work.
Because of work. Yeah.
Well, what did your parents do?
My dad was in sales at the time, marketing, and mom was a homemaker and teacher. And my dad actually ended up teaching at Humber College. So and then, but we've always had on my wife's side, we've had a family place near Bob's Lake, or on Bob's Lake near Westport.
Yeah.
So we've been coming to this area since basically the mid-90s.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Before you even lived here.
Yeah.
Brothers and sisters?
Yeah. One brother, 2 years older.
2 years old. What does he do?
He works in human resources for a big garbage company, recession proof.
Wow. Yeah. I always have garbage.
Yeah. Every business has garbages. And so, he's been doing that for quite a long time. Yeah.
And he's 2 years
2 years older than me. Yeah. And
we're born the same year, 70.
1970.
A couple months apart. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm August 70.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there you go.
Why you look so much better than I do?
No, I don't know about that.
Yeah, right.
I can see 50.
I'm looking forward to 50. Get it over with.
I don't pay attention to the dates, like my birthdays. I do pay attention to the tens.
Yes.
So I remember 40, I remember 30, I remember 20, and I'll remember 50. Like it's a sort of a marker.
I think so too. I think after 50, you've survived to 50 with not shaving your head.
Yeah,
these things, right? At 50, it's game over. You can do whatever. You're 50,
you want.
Man. Yeah. I'm just every day I just comb it very creatively. I'm like, this is gonna last another 16 months
there
or whatever.
It goes. Yeah. Good thing for me, like I'm not in a visual medium, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't need my hair, right?
Every day under the microscope, 1 million people watching. Where's his hair? What happened?
What happened?
Yeah, from
That's
yesterday.
Gradual. It's
I
gradual.
could notice it from yesterday.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Although you have the smoke and mirrors, right? You have people that look after that.
We have an army of people.
You would have to.
Yeah, we've got one person.
Do you have? You do.
Yeah, we got a makeup artist, Leslie Ann, one of the best in the business, the best in the business. Yeah, she helps us out with all that stuff.
I used to do off the record all the time, and I remember at the end they hand out these napkins or whatever to clean the makeup off. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is the best I've looked in years, right? Yeah. I know Landsberg would immediately go to the gym afterwards because it's the best he looks all day, right? Yeah. Like, why would you ever do that?
Yeah,
that's crazy. So, at what age did you start looking for all this attention?
When did I knew I was going to do this?
Yeah.
I knew I would be in TV news, and I'm not kidding. When I was 15.
Yeah.
So I watched. I often tell this story. I was watching late night television. I was big into David Letterman in the 80s, right?
Sure.
He was very edgy. And I was flipping back and forth between that and Ted Koppel. And I was aware of Ted Koppel because of the Iran hostage crisis a few years before. But there was this riveting scandal involving Tammy Faye Baker and Jim Baker.
Yep.
The first sort of scandal on television, and I just couldn't take my eyes off it. And from there, watching Ted Koppel and then watching a lot of the people at ABC News, including Sam Donaldson, of course, Peter Jennings from this area of the country, I couldn't believe people get paid to do that. And I've always loved and been interested in politics. So from that point on, I knew I wanted to work in TV news, probably covering politics. And funnily enough, as I was doing that, I also knew that at some point I was not going to be the roving correspondent living in Moscow, then living in, because it was just too hard on the family and the kids were young. We did a stint in Los Angeles, and that really showed us that it was just a bit too hard. And I'd always known that if I don't do that I'd want to jump off at the first opportunity to do local television again, which is where I started, and to anchor a show. And so when Max was preparing for retirement, that's when this kind of
so you had to take over from
legend. It was very
like I grew up in the city.
Yes.
And TV at the time was
absolutely
everything,
that's it.
right?
Yep.
6 o'clock, the whole family watched that.
Absolutely.
And Max was the guy who told you what was happening.
Absolutely. It was he in many ways he was ahead of his time in terms of leveraging small c celebrity. I don't want to get, I don't want to give people the impression that, I think I'm a celebrity, because I'm not. Like, what CTV News is about is that we're kind of like your neighbors. We're regular people, and we're just telling you what happened in the community today with some authority and some precision.
Well, what is a celebrity if not someone you recognize?
You know what I mean, though? My business is full of how do I say this without being critical? It goes to a lot of people's heads that they think they are above, or they think, in some cases, people think they deserve X, Y, and Z because they're on television.
Right. The medium is the message.
Right. And when I say Max was ahead of his time, I think he understood the power of his image, and obviously at that time when there was only a couple of outlets, unlike now, he knew that came with a certain cachet and certainly a significant amount of influence. I'm not suggesting that a broadcast doesn't have influence now. It has changed.
Yes.
It has changed. So, but it is very much a privilege to do it, and it's also vitally important work. And
I agree. Yeah.
I will never, to my grave, journalism, storytelling at conventional, in quotes, outlets, people you trust. That is the lifeblood of democracy, and we're seeing the impacts, I would argue, when people turn away from that in a very big way. Yep. I think we're seeing the impacts of that all over the Western world, not just in the United States. And I'm not being critical of populist movements. They're there for a reason. But when you start to say it doesn't matter anymore, you can put voting into that same group. I'm going to turn away from local news or from conventional news because it doesn't matter anymore. I'm going to find my own way. I'm going to look here and there and everything. Yep. I just fundamentally disagree with that.
Yes. I in the changing world that we live in media, the one thing I think that, as you would say, is remaining the same and important is the local news, right? Is to be able to have someone you trust and to see what's going on. And the fact that it's on every day at 6, you know what I mean? Like, everyone's like,
sure.
The whole world's gone, I want it to be on demand where I want it. But there is something to count on when you're sitting down, because everyone sits down for a meal still around 6, you know, family, the whole bit. And it is part of our society, right? It is part of, that's the guy who's going to...
We're obviously not blind to the fact that fewer and fewer people are sitting down because they're getting it all day long on their phones. Yep. So our job is to get in that stream on the phones, but to also maintain our place at 6 o'clock, at 5 o'clock, at 11:30, at noon, the things that we do, because unlike the CBC, for instance, the CBC strategy is clearly to only focus on the phones and only focus on mobile. They would argue with me on that, but they are saying that their main priority is mobile, is phones, is computers. That's great. It's just that we have a conventional audience, like at CTV. That still pays the bills for us, and that is very, very important to stay connected to the community, to have that. I would never, ever, and nor would our bosses, nor would anybody at CTV say, don't do as much at 6 o'clock and at 5 o'clock. Do more for the mobile audience. Now, for the younger people may say, well, then I don't get as much on my phone. And for us, maybe you don't, because we still need to prioritize our main broadcast.
Yeah, right. It is changing, and you have to continually change with it.
You do.
And you see it. There was a time when you would watch, maybe not your news, maybe something, I won't point anything out, but it seemed like they were reading the phone to you.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it's like you said, I already looked at that. You know what I mean? I already knew that. So there has to be a little...
You have to hold some of it back. You have to be... The other thing is to our people, right? Like that's the other thing that's going to draw people to an hour. Our reporters, J.J. Clark's return,
It's a big deal.
It is a big deal. Yeah. I mean, he has a massive appeal in the community. He's been here for so long, and people were really worried about him for a long time. And I understood that, and it was difficult because we couldn't say, because he wanted some privacy. And he's gone through, a health scare, but he loves to be on television. He loves to work. He loves to do what he does, and the people know that, right? Yeah. So where does that? It's a good example. Where does that phenomenon fit in this world where we're told that the old way doesn't matter?
That's right.
Video was supposed to kill the radio star. Internet was supposed to, internet has changed everything we do.
Yeah.
But I do not accept that it's killed it's killed the traditional broadcast.
Definitely not killed it, but it's funny that as we mentioned this, it seems like the important part is the actual character, the celebrity.
Yeah, the
person.
Yeah, and we started this conversation with "I'm not a celebrity."
Yeah, that's what made me laugh.
Well, and it's a good point. Yeah. Like, there's a certain amount of that they want to see. Graham and Patricia, what's on tonight? Yeah. What's JJ got to say about it? What's Matt Scooby got to say about it? You know, that is our bread and butter. It's just that we're not, you know. No one's bigger. No one's bigger than what we're doing. I guess is my point. For sure,
it is about the storytelling.
Absolutely,
right? And for me, who's a motivational speaker, a comedian, and really a huge fan of the story, right? And it is how you lay it out. I have a question for you.
Yes.
Here, maybe completely unrelated. And there's two thoughts, two ways of thinking about this. When you tell a story. And we'll use sort of a comedy sort of vernacular as the punchline. Some people would say that you tell the punchline first and then explain the story.
Right.
Others would say, you know, tease them into a story and then hit them with the punchline at the end. What is it in media?
It depends on the story. Yeah. I always say to reporters as we're going over scripts, what's your last shot, what's your opening shot, beginning, middle, and end. I think in a storytelling structure that we have, you can hold things back and surprise at the end. Yep. It's always very, very strong storytelling. So the story arc depends on the story. Like the other night, Catherine Latham had this incredible story out of Dunrobin where the money from the Red Cross is not flowing. Okay. People have trouble buying groceries, and they've only handed out X $1,000s of the $1.2 million. And so she kind of 75% into the story, she'd interviewed the Red Cross and the Red Cross spokesperson, and she asked him, why has it taken so long? And he couldn't answer. And what she did was she left his silence up for an uncomfortable amount of time, not as a trick,
right?
And he had done it several times in the interview, not as a gotcha, but when you're speaking for the Red Cross and we're doing a story about money not flowing and you don't have an answer ready for why it's been this long, and you've only handed out at that point, I believe, you know, something like $34,000 of 1.2 million or of 700,000 in emergency funds. Like, that says something, and the audience got it right away. So there's an example where you'd have that debate. Do you start with that? Do you put that in the middle? And what Kathy did, she's an excellent storyteller, she built it and nearly finished with it because the audience needs time to adjust to that. And, you know, almost like it's coming. You know, where's the answer?
Right.
And the answer that day wasn't there, and that was the story.
Yeah, it is good. Sometimes the silence, as they say, says the most, right?
It is very powerful.
Yeah,
less is more.
Oftentimes when I'll be on stage and you pause and you realize that this audience is thinking, you can see it, right? And you need them to get to that point where they understand what either the story or the joke, right?
Yes.
I mean, you have to. Everyone's the same, man. Not everything's like that for everybody, right?
And we're like, even as we're talking here, right? It's polite to fill in the blanks. It's polite in a conversation, in a story on television, to not have those gaps. But when those gaps happen and they say something, like in the example I used with Catherine Latham, that's a very effective tool, and maybe on stage as well, right?
Well, the great Mike McDonald, comedian on this podcast, said that if you can get a whole audience to not make a sound and to put their eyeballs on you, it's more powerful than an applause break.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the power of that. I did that one time. It's a story about a car accident, me and my son going to a hockey game. And I just did it on stage, and I'd been doing it as a motivational speaker for 6 years up until that point. Someone just encouraged me to do it on stage, and then I added a punchline at the end. But at the point where nobody was laughing and everything had stopped in the room, even the bartender was looking to see like what was going on. And at that point, I didn't have a clue whether or not I was doing something right or wrong in this comedy environment, right? I'd been new to comedy, and I got off the stage afterwards, and Mike McDonald, I saw him running across the back of the room, and I'm like, oh, he's either going to tell me I shouldn't be doing that on stage, and he pointed at me and said, that is comedy. Yeah. And that's, he told me about, the being able to grab an audience and get all of their attention is a unique thing nowadays, right? I mean, we're so distracted by everything. Yeah. And if you can find a story, and then there's long pauses because I've just been in a car accident, right? And I'm trying to catch my breath, and I'm trying to tell this story, and it's the fact that the eyeballs were all pointed in the right direction is the greatest thing we can do in communication, right? Is to actually get that attention.
Yeah, and particularly in a live environment, in a place like a comedy club or a performance where there are there are established norms now where you're going to have to convince us that you're funny.
Yes.
Like it's that give and take, right?
Yeah.
And it's acceptable for us to not think you're funny. So
right.
it's a unique environment for sure.
There's nothing as raw as
No.
a comedy club as getting up there on stage.
I'm reading reading Isikoff's book on Robin Williams right now.
Okay, yeah.
The biography of Robin Williams. Fantastic book.
Really?
Fantastic.
Wow.
And I'm in the early years
Yeah.
where he is just trying to find a creative outlet for this thing that's in him.
Yeah.
And it talks a lot about the audience and how in the early 80s, late 70s, he was just lighting comedy clubs on fire, looking like he was only ad-libbing.
Right.
But what he was really doing was building this act, right?
I love it. That's
and
my
this
favorite.
is like pre-Mork and Mindy, right?
Yep.
Pre his stardom. It's really interesting the way they describe how he that kind of thing, how he would get a whole group of people who were on various substances at the time.
Yep.
And just absolutely command their performance, like their attention.
Yeah, super unique individual. For
totally,
sure.
totally.
Unbelievable entertainer. As you said, just a microphone and his voice to be
Yeah.
able to. A lot of people would early on accuse him of stealing.
Yes.
But from what I understand is that this guy was like so creative and so on top of his game that he would be watching somebody else. And this is, I mean, you have to get motivated to be motivated, right? To be creative, you have to experience some other creativity. And that's what I think what would happen is he would see something and that would jog something in his head and he would write it down, but where it looked like he was writing down other people's jokes, right?
And they talk about that in the book, and it's he was constantly around comedians, constantly doing several shows a night, and also he was abusing cocaine and alcohol, and he would morph things into his own act that others would say that's mine,
Right.
and then he would pay them and say, okay, maybe so, didn't mean to do that, didn't mean to offend, and he would pay them.
Yeah.
And some took that as an admission, and he took some early hits on that.
Right.
And what he was saying was exactly what you're describing, that it was part of his process.
Right.
So
Yeah, I think that I mean, unique individual. I mean, it's the way he ended. It was
it's terrible.
It was terrible for sure. Just the way he would go out there and just give everything he got. He would be sweaty and just going off and like you said, making it seem like he's improvising, but he's not, right? And at the time when you're in there, and I know if something funny comes to your head, whether or not somebody else had said it before, you're going to say it, right?
Sure.
Just like casual conversation to maintain that, appearance of just inventing things as you go. You just say whatever. And it is a case, right? I got that from you. I'm sorry, whatever.
Right.
But I mean, they're not using it in the same sort of way that the Robin Williams did. And that's an incredible talent. Speaking of drugs, would you like some coffee here?
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yes.
A little black
a
coffee.
little press.
French press,
Very
Birch
nice.
Head, yes.
Very nice.
Black or
There's
maybe milk right
a
there.
little bit of milk would be perfect. This is part of your routine for these, huh?
Yes.
Great. So what number am I?
53.
I'm 53.
Yeah,
Great
53.
stuff.
The great. Look at that! I got a jersey on the wall with the 53.
You taking milk?
No, black.
Okay.
That's good. The great Mark Stepanowski, who
Yes.
is on. Do you know Mark Stepanowski?
No.
You know who he is? Center for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
Well, he played 13 years in the NFL, 2 Super Bowls, 5 Pro Bowls, one of the greatest centers of all time.
Wow.
Yeah, he was episode 48.
Nice.
So 15 years old. It seems to me, obviously I have a lot of life stories here going on, that people sort of make these decisions in their teens. And I know when I was a teen and people were always like, don't rush things, don't. But it seems to me when you come up with something as a teenager that you're passionate about, then that's sort of how you direct your life, if you're fortunate enough to do that, right? Obviously we have a case study of people who have achieved something. That's why they're on this podcast, right?
Yeah.
So it's 15 years old. What steps do you take at that point when you see, David Letterman and newscasters on TV? How do you point yourself in that direction?
So you, like you just kind of find your way. We didn't have any reporters or journalists in my family. Money was an issue. Parents were split, had to do OSAP loans and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
I think for my career, what I just did was I took the shortest path possible. So a short undergraduate degree at Queen's, 3 years at the time you could do a BA, and then a short postgrad at King's College in Halifax, like a master's of journalism. And because this profession's like a trade, right? It's like a plumber. You learn by stacking experiences up on top of each other in the field.
Okay.
You have degrees, you have journalism schools. Those are important.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do it that way. What's more important is working in the field, right? So, yeah, I think that looking back and looking at my own son now who's 17, when at that age, if they have a passion for something,
mm-hmm.
the notion that they could maybe morph it into making a living
mm-hmm.
will be very, very rewarding. And I don't know how or why. I do know why you would try to stop that. Like if somebody wants to be at a very early age an actor or something that's very difficult to make a living at, you know.
Or an anchor of the news.
Or an anchor of the news.
You know?
Well, yeah, I mean, I love news, right? If you're going to be in TV news as a reporter to start, at least there are a significant number of jobs. There's fewer jobs than there were. But yeah, true. There's only a few anchors around.
Yeah.
But to your point, there's so many young people, even people I went to university with in later years, who still didn't know what the heck they were going to do. Mm-hmm. The fact that I had known for 7 years, you really should try to grow that.
Yes.
As a parent, as an educator, if you see that, I would think you would champion it.
Right. So you have 2 boys.
I have 2 boys, yeah.
17?
One's 17, Jack's 17, Bennett is 14.
Okay.
Jack is a hockey player, loves the sports, and Bennett is a dancer. Uh-huh. And Bennett is a competitive dancer. So
what does that mean?
It means he's out of the house 5 nights a week, working on a so he has a dance company that he dances with. He dances contemporary, he dances hip hop, and it's as a sports guy, it's really interesting. So they start in August. Mm-hmm. We drop them off at the studio 4 nights a week. They get their routines. Yeah. They're offered, say, 7 dances to do. They work on them for months. As a parent, you don't see them until January, and then they go into competition. It's the way hockey should be. Yeah. So, in hockey, you're watching games, you're watching practices, you're dropping them out, you're getting right in there and tying skates, all that stuff. Now, you're involved in dance, but you just don't get to see it. So when Bennett has his showcase in January, February, and then they go into competition, they call it comp season, and then the first time you see it, your doors are just blown off.
Yeah, that's cool.
Because they've worked for months on it, right?
Yeah. Can you imagine what happened? Sorry, can you imagine what happened to bring about that rule that no parents are allowed to watch? It must have been nuts, right?
Well, yeah, and the thing, it works because they need, it's very physical, it's very demanding, and you wouldn't believe how much work goes into it. It's very much like sports. It's very athletic. And the fact that it is completely in a studio with instructors and peers, it's been very, very positive. Yeah.
I remember Fame. Remember Leroy from Fame? That guy's legs. As a kid, that was like the most athletic guy I knew of, right?
It's kind of like that. It really is. Some of these dancers you wouldn't believe and you watch them grow as your kid grows up, right? Yeah. Like they're all growing up and they're all advancing. And
there's things that you can do that, like as a career, right? There's places to go.
You can. And the other, it's what I like about it is for him, he's always been very confident, very. He's a performer. I don't know where he gets that, and he has the level of confidence he has just in everyday interactions. I know it's connected to dance.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I see that in my son too, in his on ice, the way he handles himself. I think when I watch him on ice,
how old's he?
He's 17.
Yeah.
I think our kids have played against each other.
Who's
at some
he?
point.
Where does he
He's
play?
with the Sting now, but when they were younger, he was. He used to live in Barrhaven, Nepean.
Yeah.
And then Gloucester here.
So Jack plays Sting.
Yeah, but he's a higher level, I think.
Maybe, yeah.
This is B.
Okay, yeah. So
just the way he holds himself on the ice, the way he skates by, you can tell that's someone who off ice is going to be a confident person. So because of sport, and I see that coming from him, I feel like he'll be fine in life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's what team sports are about for me.
And I was into music, so I was into drums, and I played in bands. I goofed around with rock and roll, so I turned away from sports, and I my parents, I didn't have time to. I couldn't. It was, things were going on, but I truly believe that it does prepare, and I'm not just saying this because my son's finishing minor hockey at 17 after, God,
isn't that crazy?
It's crazy after 12 years or whatever it is. We've poured a lot of time and money into it, and a lot of resources, and it ties the family up, as you know, for the entire winter.
Yep.
But I see him dealing with adversity. I see him dealing with injustice on the ice, whether it's a bad call or bad behavior or both. and you still got to roll with it and keep
Yep.
playing. Like, that's a life lesson.
Yep.
And it's not about making the NHL.
Nope.
It's not about making junior hockey. He played at AAA for a while, but he's perfectly comfortable where he is.
That's right.
It's fun, and I'm just a huge fan of it. Like, if you can, I know there are parents out there with newborns who are like, I'm not sure about hockey. And I just keep an open mind.
I'm not sure about it either, but I'm glad I have my son in it. The other two are not in it. That was sort of their decision at a young age. But I like, it's like anything. I don't know. You know what I mean? For you, it might work out. For you, it might not. It's so many variables in this hockey world that it's crazy, and you see a lot of craziness. But like you say, end of the day, when he doesn't make that team, that's a learning lesson, right? That's almost doing him more good than if he had made the team.
Absolutely.
Right? Getting cut, all those things. Injuries, learning to overcome obstacles.
Because if you look at our kids now, and not to get too deep about parenting, how often in our socioeconomic group in this city, how often are you telling kids no? You can't do that, or it's pretty rare, I would say, overall. I'm not saying it's a completely permissive society. But when something is not accessible, or you're cut, or you're told you can't make it, you can't do it, it is transformational. They won't ever forget it.
That's right.
And the basketball guy, I never watch basketball, and I'm watching him. The colorful guy who speaks, or who is the color guy on the Raptors, get out of my yard, that guy, I don't forget his name, Jack, I think. Anyway, he says life's 90% of 10% of what happens to you, 90% of what you do. Yeah. And that's really true.
Yes, for
That's
sure.
how you deal with it, And it's easy as an adult sitting there looking at a 10-year-old or 11-year-old in tears who got cut.
That's right.
To say that. But later on, you talk about it, and
that's right. So in the arc of the Graham Richardson success, where did that happen? When we look back and we go, that's the reason why, right? That like, for me, it was the passing of my brother, right? I don't know if you're familiar with the story, but October 30th, 1985.
I saw your post.
Right, yesterday. So yesterday, it was the anniversary. He passed away. And I'd only played 1 year of organized football, and I made a promise that day that, we'd set a goal of me making it to the NFL. I never stopped trying. The next 10 years were filled with mostly failure and people telling me I couldn't do it. And on October 30th, 1995, I signed a contract with the Miami Dolphins, and our favorite player, Dan Marino, welcomed me to the team. So as I look back, I'm like, well, had he not unfortunately passed away at a young age, I never would have had that drive and that determination to keep going on. I mean, maybe I would have, and maybe something great would have happened anyways. But daily basis, every time something went wrong, I said, I made a promise. I'm just going to keep going. And it got to the point where didn't even have to think about it. I knew that's what I was doing with my life. It's what drove me. It's my motivation. Yeah. Right. So, you mentioned something. I wasn't into sports because things were going on when you. What was that?
Well, I mean, it was like, my parents split up, and it was hard. My brother moved out, and everybody goes through things. Yeah. But I never had. I'll put it this way, Mark. I never had the option to figure out, to go back home and sort of figure out what I wanted to do. I kind of figured out what I wanted to do, and that had happened. And I knew I had to work, right? Yep. Like, I couldn't take summers off. And I don't say that as a sob story. I just knew that I loved doing this. I was very interested in this. And so I had to get at it. Yeah. And I guess my drive was the fact that I really didn't have an option to just retreat back home. Yep. I had to kind of create my own way, because for various reasons, like it was very, very challenging part of my life. A lot of people go through it. Yes. It's just that there was some mental illness, and so I really didn't have an option other than to find my own way and to make this work. Right. So I guess that's what drove me, that I knew in material ways I was kind of on my own. As soon as I got out of university, I needed to get at it. And I was lucky enough that I wasn't just chasing, a salary. Right. I wasn't chasing, something to pay the bills. At least I was chasing something I loved to do, and I was passionate about, and remain passionate about. Do
you worry that your children do not have that kind of motivation based on necessity?
Sometimes.
Yeah. I think too.
And I want them to have a safe place. I want them to be able to fall and come back, and I want to be able to say, don't worry, I can take care of it. You know what I mean? All that sort of stuff as a parent. I want that. And Jack's a very kind, understanding kid, and is very self-conscious about how much hockey costs.
Right.
And I, he's carrying around, sometimes the sticks are $250, $300, right?
Yeah.
And me and my brother talk about this because he's got a hockey kid and a lacrosse kid, and he's like, can you believe what's going out the door on this sport? We didn't have that option, right? No. And we don't. I'm trying very hard not to say that as a guilt thing on my kids, because I'm glad they're fortunate and safe, and I'm glad they're able to participate. I wouldn't have it any other way. Yep. But I do want them to know, and they do know, that, there's kids and there's parents who aren't in this, who aren't in this. They can't be in it.
Yes.
And you run the risk, I think, as a parent, of being preachy about that and being overly focused on that. But I do get a bit concerned that, what is their drive going to be?
Right.
They certainly have a lot of drive. It's not like they're lying around the house playing video games. Nothing wrong with that every once in a while. No,
I'm pretty sure in my life I've done it for weeks.
Yeah. But I get what you're saying, that if that drove me, what's driving them?
Exactly, yeah. And that's what I think about my children all the time. We live in a nice house, and they come home and there's food, and nobody's passed away, and knock on wood, and everything's good, and it's, and what makes you want to do that thing that's extraordinary, that possibly, that people thought you couldn't do? Or is there even a need to do that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, for me, there was a need to do that was buried inside me, because it was the only way I could deal with the loss of my best friend, my brother,
Right.
And so that's what I had to do. But they don't have that. They don't have, they, like you said, they have a video game to get better at. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I do think, though, our perspective of what their life is like is completely different, obviously, from what ours was like. Can you imagine having your friends at your fingertips 24/7? Can you imagine? Not only the negatives and all the blah, 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 but like my sons don't call people anymore and say, I'll meet you there.
Right.
They look at Snapchat and see where everybody is. And then sometimes they don't even talk, and they're at the door. I said, where are you going? Well, everybody's meeting up here. Yeah. It's a different world. So in relation to what drives you, they still are driven to succeed. Yes. I don't think a safe and prosperous home life necessarily will take away someone's drive to make their own success. But they don't have that necessity that I had, but something else will drive them.
That's right.
And it's certainly not their father's anxiety. Lighten up, Dad.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point, right? I mean, we do worry more than we should.
Totally.
And that they want us to, right?
Yeah.
And for us, like when we were young, you wanted to be a newscaster, and something that you could see in 20 years was still going to be there.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a football player. I knew in 10 years that's still going to be there. They look at the future and they think, what's it going to be, right? How do you as a father point them in a direction where you don't even know where the future's going? Like, it's changing so quickly.
Yeah, like Jack, Jack's very, very passionate about sports. He loves stats. He loves sports writing. Yeah. And I'm like, that's really hard these days.
Yeah.
But then I stop myself, and I think of all the sports jobs or all the jobs that have been created after the internet that I don't even know about. That's right. Athletic. It's one of the dominant sports publications now that didn't exist a few years ago.
One?
It's called The Athletic.
Okay.
It's excellent.
Yeah.
It's excellent. They're taking writers from the Globe and Mail. They're taking writers they do hockey. They do, and it's a subscription-based sports website, and it's fantastic, right? So who am I to say in conventional media that things are shrinking? Of course they are.
Yeah.
But then there's this other side that I don't even know about. So I think they'll find their own way. I think they'll find their own way. But I do, the things I know about, I'll let them know, and try to steer them I'll try to steer them away from something that I know they'll have less chance of success at.
Right.
And then I guess the question is, if they're really driven to do that, at what point do you cut it?
Right.
What point do you say, you've got to figure that out yourself, that it's not a, and that's what
I'm
parenting
heavy on
is.
this figure it out yourself method of parenting for sure.
Yeah.
And I guess if we give them the tools to sort of overcome challenges and obstacles, then we're doing our job, right?
Sure.
Like it's not, we don't necessarily have to give them the actual game plan, but tell them how to make a game plan, right? Like
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Well, we all know stories about people whose parents were too conscripted and controlling, I think, just generally anecdotally. And then I think kids pay the price for that. They're not ready, right? They're overwhelmed when they get out on their own, if they ever get out on their own.
Right.
So you got to strike that balance and whatever's good for you, right? Are we a family where he's going to take off a year before university and go backpacking across Europe?
Oh, I hope so.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
His mother would have something to say about that.
Do you guys travel as a family?
We do, not massively, but yeah, we do, and those are some of our best memories.
Yes.
And like as a kid, I didn't get to Europe, but we went to London and Scotland. It was they'll never forget it. It was fabulous. It was 7 days, 8 days, but it was nice.
That is great. Yeah, we just got back from the Grand Canyon, and that's the greatest trip of my life for sure. Yeah, we left from here. Trailer drove
yeah.
Oh yeah, it was amazing. And so we were in the back of a pickup truck, no like TV monitors or anything, and I'm thinking these are three boys getting big, 17, 14 and 11, in the back of a pickup truck, and then a trailer, not a big trailer, small trailer, together. It was the greatest trip of my life.
Wow.
Yeah, unbelievable. They all
you camp? You camp?
Yep. Yeah, in a trailer. Yeah, we had a trailer. Yeah, we went to trailer parks and stuff like that. We stayed at Walmart parking lots, the whole bit. Like we don't know if we're gonna find a place to stay tonight. Pull over. It was some nights it was dark and rainy, and we didn't know where we were gonna stay, and it all worked out. And everyone. One time, my wife lost her purse with everything in it. She had the satchel, and we kept everything, passports, all our money, all our credit cards. And we pulled over at a gas station. We were rearranging things, and she puts it down on the ground, and we fill up. We leave. We go like to the next gas station. So whatever that is, 3-4 hours down the road, we go to pay. And we're like, we left the purse at the last.
Oh no!
We call the place. The lady's looking through the garbage, the whole thing. Nobody lost. This is the real test, right?
Yeah.
This is like 10, 12 days in. We're like, we can't find it. What do we do? What do we do? And everything is on sort of a schedule. Everything's so busy. You got to be at that trailer park that day, or that you'll lose it the whole bit. And the whole thing's about to explode. And what had happened is my wife was driving, who's 5'3". Seat was all the way up. I got in, 6'6", moved the seat all the way back. My son reaches under the seat. He goes, "I found the purse."
Wow.
Oh yeah, we'd had 20 minutes of is our family going to just explode right now?
So it's passports, cash, everything.
Everything was in there. It was just so much easier to keep it all in one spot, we thought. And then so it was.
What a story.
Yeah, unbelievable, man. Yeah, the whole thing when he's just like, couldn't even see it. And we'd searched the whole truck, obviously in everything. The whole parking lot was full of all of our
And then
stuff.
you get in your head, I did leave it. And it's, and then I do that all the time.
And I saw it there. I saw her put it there.
I do that all the time.
Wow. And so that was the moment, the traveling, and like we say, everything seems like it's going downhill, and it could be bad. Nobody lost their temper. Nobody started blaming anyone else.
Yeah.
And it solved itself, man. It's like the world.
Had you actually called the other? You called the other.
We had called the gas station. The lady was looking through the dumpster to see if she could find it, so we could at least stop looking. Whatever she had on her phone, she had her cell phone, and she was calling the credit card company to cancel it. Which, had she canceled it, would have been another problem because we wouldn't have a credit
found
card.
it. Yeah.
And then as she's on the phone waiting on hold, thank God we were waiting on hold for whatever. My son reached under the seat and he goes, "You're not going to believe this. I found it." It was the greatest feeling. I won the Super Bowl, right? Like, it was the greatest moment of my life, man, for sure.
Fantastic.
And that's all. Like, there was that moment at he's 17, like your son is, when we got back, and I realized that might be our last time as a family to be together. And ever since, I've been a bit of a wreck.
Man. Well, I'm getting into that too, right? Like, Jack's planning to go to university, and so our next summer trip might be our last for a while. Like, we've got my in-laws' place on Bob's, so we go there. So that's a gathering. But traveling the four of us.
And it's expensive. Like,
it's
4 people is not you
cheap.
and your wife in a
5
backpack
people?
anymore, man. Yeah, we're talking $20,000.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
And it's yeah, I mean, obviously I didn't even think about the money because it's the experience,
Sure.
It's the trip, right? It's the whole thing about being a family and those experiences of having things almost go terribly wrong and then go right is why we do them, right? We can't set them up that way, but that's life too, like we experience something. And another question I have for you, because we last saw each other at the tornado site here at Arlington Woods. And that for me was something I'd never seen. 16 years in the fire department, I'd seen lots of things, lots of terrible things. But and I don't know if I was completely ready for that in Ottawa, in the hometown that I grew up in the place. I knew our fire station had 20 trees just ripped right out of the ground. It's a completely different place now.
Yeah.
Our area, our district around Conroy Road, houses ripped, roofs ripped off, trees in the street, and I'd seen that stuff before. Maybe about 10 years ago, there was a big windstorm in this area and the whole bit. When I got to Arlington Woods and I saw the people whose lives had just changed in, I think it was like 15 seconds there.
Yeah.
Enormous trees. And they're just standing there. And there's nothing, they were friendly because that's all it could be, and a lot of them had drinks. It was the middle of the day and they're like just standing there on their front lawn. That's when I saw you and this is something I've never seen before, and you don't even know what to say to these people.
No.
Like, sorry's not enough, and it got to the point where we just smiled and do you guys need anything? And then you just keep going. There's nothing you can say, and as a first responder, I see that stuff, but as a news reporter, you're also there on the front line, right? That's a real. So,
and one of the things in my career I'll never forget is the smell in New Orleans after Katrina. Mm-hmm. Just that the power of Mother Nature and how quickly everything can be swept away, just like that, right? And Katrina was a fairly long build. At least they knew it was coming. And Arlington Woods, we had other people everywhere else. I spent most of my time in Arlington Woods, and the affluence there, obviously, very nice homes.
Beautiful.
It's overwhelming, and it's something the pictures don't do justice to until you go. I tell people, because the lens that you're seeing, even the HD lens at home, this is your frame. My frame right now in this room is out to here. So when you're walking through Arlington Woods with 150, 200-year-old trees left, right, and center down, and we're not even shooting it because there's so much of it, because there's a tree through a house over there. Yeah. It's something else. There are going to be years of recovery there. Years.
It'll never be the same.
It'll never be the same. No.
Right? The size of that one tree, and it was like 2 times the size of this table. It was enormous, right across someone's front lawn. See the one that went through the Tesla?
Yeah.
Oh my!
One through the car, and it is I don't know if you found this, but I've got a few trees around my house. As soon as I got back, I started to look around differently.
I have 12 maples here. They're at least 150 years old. Yeah. And one thing I learned from Arlington Woods, because anytime there's a windstorm around here, I'm always a little nervous. Sure. And kind of, actually, you saw the roof on this house. We had it's like a farmhouse kind of roof. Yeah. This is a heritage district where all the roofs are flat. Right. Someone who lived here 10, 15 years ago obviously was worried like that too, and put that gable roof on top. Nice. And the one thing I learned, that's what I was like. Oh, my wife's like, the guy when we moved in said that's there for trees. If where the kids sleep, that's there, but we have the separate living, this area here, and it doesn't have that. Right. But one thing I did learn in that area is all the trees, from what I could see, did not fall right straight through the house. They all seem to get all caught up in the roof trusses. Yeah. You know what I mean? So there is some sort of I guess based on building codes or whatever, that there is something to save. Yeah, like you're not inside the house. And it's incredible that there were serious injuries, but there weren't any deaths. Yeah.
And one guy I was talking to across the road in Craig Henry, and we went back to talk to him afterwards, and he had that bewildered look outside his house. Yeah. It was the worst hit house. And then right next door, there was some shingle damage. It's one of those deals, right? Tornadoes are incredible. And his house is basically a write-off, so he was walking me through the house. But he said, and it stuck with me, he said, I grabbed my dog when I got the warning, and I headed to the basement, and I couldn't get there in time. That's how fast it was. He said it was less than 60 seconds, and his house had insulation blown in, roof ripped off, garage ruined. The house was basically totaled. Like there were rooms that looked normal until you looked closely, and then the crack in the wall and the foundations moved, right? And then you go outside and it's like a war zone, and it happened in less than 60 seconds. He tried to heed that warning, and he didn't have enough time.
Right.
I think that warning system saved people. I honestly do. For all of our fatigue, for all of our another warning, warning. Think about pre that warning. What did they have? They had radio, they had television.
Yeah.
There was no warning system on phones. And so even though people were basically, I didn't get it, I did get it, everyone was talking about those warnings that afternoon.
Yep.
So people were generally aware something was happening. And I'm sure there will be studies about it, whether it worked or not. And maybe I'm going too far in saying lives were saved. I think that the level of awareness of wild weather is much higher with that warning system. Despite like our newscast that night, the sound was blown away. Like I rewatched it when I got home, and they put up this big red banner, and you couldn't hear what we were saying, and it said tornado warning, tornado warning. I'm fine with that. Let the pictures roll.
It came in at
it came
6
in
o'clock?
it was the first warnings, I think, were around 4:00.
Okay.
And then it was really on. The Gatineau one hit right after 6:00.
Okay. Yeah.
And I rewatched the next day our show, and because it was happening as we were on the show. The first part of what Patricia and I were saying is blocked out because there's a big red banner and an alert, a tornado warning. I think that's a good thing.
Yes.
I think if you're sitting around and you're not in the neighborhood, holy cow, something's going on. It's a signal. You know.
If it didn't save someone this time, which it likely might have, it will next time.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, people take it seriously.
Yeah.
Right.
The second I hear that, I'm heading for
Yeah.
the basement for sure.
Yeah.
There's a local comedian, Kyle Mesdag, very good comedian. He's like, I got the tornado warning. I looked at it. Guess it's gonna rain.
But you know what? That's funny,
Yeah.
and people can relate to that. And let them do that.
Yes.
Let people think that.
Yeah.
But at least they're paying attention, and it's in the
That's
conversation,
right. Yeah,
right?
We made a joke of it. All right, kids, it's a tornado supper, and we all looked out here because we knew it was coming down the river.
It wasn't that far.
Right, it wasn't that far.
I sent my kids to the basement,
yeah.
and I was in the studio,
Yeah.
and Jack had hockey, and Leanne's texting me back, really? And I'm like, yes, it's in Gatineau. Get to the basement, right? And then Jack texts me back, tornado warning over. And like, as I'm getting messages that it's gone, okay, you can go. But they went to the basement on their own. The kids. They were there by themselves, and they went to the basement on their
It's
own.
good to have at least know where you should go.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Like we've had that discussion here many times. What would be the safest place? Like because you said there's enormous trees around. We went to my son had music lessons, so we got in the car and drove to Orleans. And as we're driving there, there's like the reports coming in from Dunrobin. The school's on fire. It's the worst day ever. Like and we're like, oh, I guess we better drive a little faster.
Yeah.
If I don't pick you up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean that's so you're on the front line of all these things, right? Like it gets overlooked because first responders, military personnel, they see all this stuff, and
there's
how do you deal with that?
Well, I'm not like a war correspondent, but there are now there's discussion inside my industry about reporters being placed in very dangerous places over and over and over again, and the impact that has. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because often, the very minimal overseas work I've done or disaster work I've done, you're often going in on your own with a bunch of cash, right? So for the hurricanes in the United States, we rented a big truck, we had rain gear, and we had $10,000 US because we had there's no bank machines, there's no credit cards, and we had to buy food, and we had to pay for things, right? But then you're alongside the military or first responders. They're in with bigger teams, they're in with bigger support, and you're often on your own. You think about that. But again, I'm not putting myself in those places. And what I found is the more you do it, the better you get at it. The more you anticipate. I think Adrienne Arsenault wrote that she has a go bag or something, or she used to. Now she's an anchor, but she had a go bag where she would go to a war zone like with the clothes, and then she'd just throw them out on her way home, and then she'd replace them and put them in the bag at home, ready to go to the next place. I mean, that kind of thing.
She was always in the worst spots for years.
Yeah,
right?
that's like she's and Lisa Laflamme same way. Lisa's been to some very sketchy areas, right? Really, really deep conflicts in places like Afghanistan, and the notion that you can just go tell the story and not carry it with you.
That's right.
Yeah.
To me, that's when you get to the point you're like, is it worth it? Is this worth risking your life and your family? To go tell that story. I mean, in the long run, someone's got to tell the story, right? Like
Right.
the story's not told, then it continues to
Well,
repeat itself.
it's similar to firefighters, I would think. You don't want to be in the middle of a tragedy, but when the big thing is happening, you want to be there to tell the story. You want to be there to help. You guys want to help, and we want to reflect back what's going on. It's a vital part of it. And there is nothing quite like that feeling of being in the middle of the largest story in the world.
Right.
And it's only happened to me a few times, but it's not even the phone. It's just you can physically feel how big it is when you're with the world's media and you're in one of the biggest stories in the world.
That's why you do it, right?
It's very intoxicating. It's people get addicted to it. It's very intoxicating. They want to be the next big thing.
Yeah.
But it has an impact on personal life, on your family, and high divorce rates, and because you're always gone. Yeah. It's very hard.
Yeah, that is tough for sure. What's an example of the biggest? What's the biggest story that you've?
I think Katrina was the biggest story I probably covered. That summer, the 3 hurricanes, Katrina, Wilma, and Rita, in succession in 2005. Those were big stories. My first story in California when I was posted there, first big story was the Michael Jackson trial, the verdict. That was like my first story.
Like when he died, you mean?
No, when he was charged. The trial in Santa Maria for sexual assault. And so I was there with just 2 colleagues from CTV, our new bureau, basically, because we'd established in Los Angeles, and there was 100 people just from ABC News there.
Wow.
It was massive, just a massive celebrity story. That's one of the biggest stories in the world. When the Michael Jackson verdict came down, everyone was, it wasn't O.J. Simpson, but it was pretty close.
Was bigger. O.J. was the biggest sort of celebrity thing to ever happen at the time.
I think so.
Which is sort of the sign of the times, things to come, right?
Yeah.
Like the whole Trump era, the whole celebrity becoming a president, the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
It's based on our availability to media now, right? That's the way. What do you see happening in the future? Is it what direction are we going? Is there going to be a correction, or
I don't know?
Do you know what I mean? Like it seems to be going into from the way we were when we were kids. We never could have guessed what's happening right now.
No, and I think everybody is American focused for obvious reasons. The change that has happened there is extraordinary. A friend of mine who worked there for 11 years says he has great faith in the institutions and the system in the United States.
Yeah. Right.
And it's not an anti-Trump thing he's saying, but he says that it is there are built-in checks in the system.
Yes.
And he thinks that those checks will be enough to correct what many people are concerned about. And I know that sounds like sort of mealy-mouthed, balanced and fair journalism, but look, the Americans, the system voted in Donald Trump. There's millions of people who voted for Donald Trump and who legitimately see him as the president. He is the president. But there are millions others who didn't, and this person I was speaking with says that the check on the president doesn't have a dictatorial control on power for a reason. There's Congress, there are the courts. Now, that was a few months ago, and now others have said that those very systems and checks are now being undermined to the point where the president will not be contained and controlled in a way that he has been conventionally.
And he's the one, his lawyers are the one figuring that out, it seems like, on a daily basis, right? He comes up with, well, that's not actually the way it's supposed to happen.
Right.
Which is
the citizenship thing's a good example, right? Citizenship birth, where he says, we've got to end that and I'll do it by executive order. Well, he can't. Yeah. But can he or can't he?
Yeah.
Anyway, so is there a correction coming is a good question. And I don't know the answer to it. I think that we're in a fascinating time. In many ways, it's a scary time. But I often say in my business, in the 90s, we were in the good old days and we didn't even know it. The news networks were growing. The internet hadn't happened yet. Jobs were about to be created. And, of course, all we did was sit around and say how bad it is and how it used to be much better. So perspective's a big thing. So, I think the short answer, I've given you a long non-answer to your question. I think there's some kind of the pendulum will swing back. And we have to remember, if we're talking about the Americans, we've had 8 years of a very progressive president to the point where many Canadians, I think our view of President Obama was not the view that a lot of Americans had. It's pretty clear. I think that pendulum has swung back. That's part of the reason for Donald Trump.
Yep.
And will it come back again? Yes, it will. When will it come back again? Will it be 8 years? Will it be 4 years? Will there be some combination of the both? I tend to think it's not going to be extreme. Like, I think it's going to be, you're not going to have Barack Obama to take out Donald Trump in 4 years or whoever's running.
Or The Rock.
The Rock, some kind of celebrity savior.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's been crazy presidents in the past. I guarantee for sure.
There have been.
You're just not aware of them.
Well, and there has never been a president who, in the media age, in the modern age of social media, is absolutely prefers to conduct his business on social media and relishes the fight no matter what.
Right, yeah.
That's what he does. Mm-hmm. The tradition of presidents, Bush, like I think about President Bush after 9/11. Mm-hmm. He said, one of my main job is to manage Americans' thirst for revenge. And what he meant by that, and I understood that, what he meant by that, and this was a conservative, right-wing president who shocked a lot of people by how right-wing he was, right? At the time. He was basically saying, I will allow certain things, and arguably many people, waterboarding, torture, Guantanamo Bay, he allowed too much. Mm-hmm. But I think about that context and what would happen if a 9/11 happened now. Mm-hmm. How would this president manage Americans' thirst for revenge? Yeah. What would that look like?
It would be terrifying, I would imagine. That's what everyone would think. Yeah.
I would think so. But anyway, so I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The whole Trump thing is just, you could go on forever, right? Because it's crazy. If your job did not exist tomorrow, what would you do?
That's a good question.
Yeah. Because, you know so much about, politics, for one thing, right? You know so much about the world, what's going on, what works. We talked about at the beginning how things are working in other parts of the world and how they're not working here in Ottawa. And you see, like Caroline Meehan's, switched to politics.
I don't know what I would do. Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I don't know what I'd do. If my job ceased to exist, I think that I would be, I would look for something. You know what? So we're not talking about salary and paying the bills. We're just talking about
that's running
occupation.
That's running out in 6 months.
Okay, it's running out in 6 months.
Yeah.
I think I would look micro, I think. Yeah. I would go the other way. I wouldn't go big. Mm-hmm. I found in my time in this business that, whether it's charity or storytelling, people care more about their garbage pickup than they do about the Constitution. And I think that applies to a lot of things. I think there's in this crazy world and where people view it as scary and things are changing very, very fast. Mm-hmm. I think the basics are what attract me. And whether it's just getting food on the table for people who need it at the food bank, something like that. Yeah. I'm not saying I'd go work for the food bank. Yeah. I'm saying that kind of work. Yes. I have more and more respect for low overhead, low staff numbers, and just getting the basics out the door. That really attracts me. And I think maybe it's because I'm getting older. It's like sort of a cut through the crap kind of a thing. Like just be able to do something, because we're all hemmed by bureaucracy, by rules, by things that sometimes don't make sense. Mm-hmm. So if I were free of that, I think that's probably something I would be attracted to. Mm-hmm.
It's funny how in the beginning of our life we're so focused on the things that we are passionate about, the things that we want to achieve. And then you start sort of seeing the world, and then you realize it's when you're helping others achieve that, helping others get by, have their food, then that truly is what makes you happiest. Succeeding in what you want to do is happy for a little while, but it's when it's the long-term happiness that gets you out of bed when you're helping somebody else move in that direction or just provide the basics.
And I don't know about you, but I find I take greater satisfaction now in being in that space at work where the team's growing, where you're reflecting back to community. Like I'm immensely proud. I'm not saying this just because to be a corporate guy. I'm immensely proud of how we covered the tornadoes, and the team effort that continues to this day. And in an environment where it's not 1995 and CGOH is not the only game in town, the more events we have like that, where people who maybe haven't dropped in for a while, they realize, whoa,
that's right.
That's
completely
important.
agree.
That's important.
That's changed everyone's eyeball direction.
Right. Yeah. You know, and in a lot of ways, I keep coming back to the hurricanes and Katrina did that as well. People forget the American media was being questioned. They're always being questioned now, but they were being questioned about, were they unfair or whatever. And then they singularly focused on this natural disaster. And they did things that only the media can do, holding people to account for where that money went. Why hasn't this been built yet? Why are you delaying this? Why are politics playing a role here? Why did the president fly over and not land and talk to the people on the ground? Those are all sort of defining moments for them. And on a much smaller scale, when Dunrob and Gatineau, Calabogie gets slammed, we're there, and as we have to be, as we should be. Right. And I don't need a hero call for that, but it's comforting to be able to do that and to engage people who maybe haven't been engaged as much because they've been consuming news elsewhere. I don't know.
That's right. No, and it's sort of a tribe mentality too. You get that feeling like, at 6:00 we're all going to see what's happening. We're all changing our focus to what's going on. And that's
I hope so.
A huge important part in this community.
I think we're sifters. I think what's going to happen is the volume of news, the volume of content on phones, on everything is so high all day long.
Yeah.
If you're going to turn to us, you're going to turn to us as sifters. What's really important here? Why did this happen? And if that's not on your broadcast, then maybe it's not that significant. That's my hope anyway.
That's a great way, because there is so much going on the phone right now that you don't know what to look at, right?
Yeah, you don't. You don't.
Yeah.
I find I'm looking at, your feed is judged. Your feed is driven by your consumption, and so I'm looking at a lot of URLs like I'll see a headline. Oh, well, that's interesting. But then I won't click until I look at it. And sometimes it's garbage.
They're always garbage.
Yeah. It's just garbage. Like it's some, newsrightnow.com from somewhere trying to get clicks for ads.
Yeah, clickbait.
And then you read the story and it's nothing, or it's garbage,
Yeah, it is.
And so more information and less trust. That's the world we're living in.
Less trust, more information.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you don't lose your job tomorrow.
I hope so too.
Yeah, that was great, man. I appreciate it.
It's great to have me, Mark.
An hour and 10 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, good. I hope it wasn't too long.
No, you were fantastic. Perfect. Right on, man.
Good stuff.
Take a picture and
turn
this on.